The city lights of Licora shimmered like gold dust across the horizon, but to Darian Nwoko Johnson, they felt hollow. From the balcony of Orem Heights mansion, he watched the night spread over the skyline, endless glass towers, luxury cars gliding below, the hum of power surrounding his every breath. Yet, inside, his heart was restless. He had been raised in abundance, the only son of Chief James Nwoko, founder of Orem Holdings, and Lady Miriam Johnson Nwoko, one of Licora's most admired philanthropists. His life was a masterpiece of privilege, private jets, tailored suits, exclusive parties. But beneath the silk and applause, there was a silence money couldn't fill. Every friendship he had felt transactional. Every woman he met seemed to admire the heir, not the man. Even love had turned into a performance-rehearsed smiles, shallow compliments, and an invisible distance he could never cross. One evening, after an exhausting dinner with socialites arranged by his mother, Darian excused himself and walked alone to his father's study. "Father," he began, voice low, "I'm tired of living a life that doesn't belong to me." Chief James looked up, his sharp eyes softening. "What are you saying, son?" "I want to leave Licora, just for a while," Darian said, his tone trembling between courage and fear. "I want to live like an ordinary man. No titles, no chauffeurs, no bodyguards, just me. I need to know who I am without all this." Lady Miriam's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Leave? Darian, the world outside this house is not kind. You were born into responsibility, not adventure. What will people say if the heir to Orem Holdings runs off to find himself?" Her words were laced with love, but also with fear. Fear of losing control, fear of scandal, fear of a world that didn't bend to wealth. Darian stood firm. "I'd rather face the world's cruelty than live a life that's not real. I need to be loved for who I am, not what I have." Silence filled the room. The ticking of his silver watch echoed a gift from his late grandfather, engraved with the words, "To know yourself is to love truly." Chief James leaned back in his chair, studying his son. "Let him go," he said finally. "A man who never walks away from comfort will never discover truth." Lady Miriam turned away, tears forming. "Then promise me you'll be safe." "I promise, Mother," Darian said gently, kissing her forehead. "I'll return when I've found what I'm missing." At dawn, the mansion stood still. Darian packed a small brown suitcase jeans, a few shirts, no designer tags. He left behind his black Range Rover and took a commercial bus heading toward Macondo Town, far from Licora's polished skyline. As the bus rolled through dusty highways and faded billboards, Darian gazed out the window. For the first time, no one recognized him. No one bowed. No one cared. And yet, a strange peace filled him. He whispered a quiet prayer. "God, if there's still something real left in this world, help me find it." The bus roared on through the night, leaving behind the glittering city that had given him everything except himself. The morning sun over Macondo Town painted everything gold: the rusted rooftops, the red clay roads, and the slow-moving crowd of traders setting up stalls for the day. To Darian Nwoko Johnson, it was all unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. Gone were the marble floors of Orem Heights mansion. Here, life moved in rhythm with the earth, simple, honest, and raw. He rented a small single-room apartment behind a carpenter's workshop. It had no air conditioner, no chandelier, No luxury mattress, just a creaky bed, a wooden chair, and a cracked mirror that reflected his new beginning. For the first time, Darian slept without security guards at the gate, without servants waking him for breakfast. When dawn came, he rose with the sound of roosters and distant laughter from the streets. As he walked through the market, he passed small kiosks and food stalls, the smell of fried plantain and grilled fish filling the air. One sign caught his attention. Mama K's kitchen, home of the best jollof in Macondo. He stepped inside. The little restaurant was full of chatter and warmth. A plump, cheerful woman in her late 50s moved from table to table, serving plates with the confidence of someone who had fed generations. "You're new here, my son," she said, looking him over with curiosity. "You don't look like these market boys. You look like someone running from something." Darian smiled faintly. "Maybe I am, Mama. Do you need a worker?" She studied him for a long moment. Can you carry plates, clean, stand on your feet all day?" "Yes, Ma," he replied simply. "Then wear that apron," she said with a grin. "At Mama K's, we don't just feed bellies, we feed souls." And so Darian became a waiter. The first few days nearly broke him. His hands, once smooth and pampered, blistered from scrubbing pots. His legs ached from long hours on his feet. He spilled soup, burnt his fingers, and faced impatient customers who scolded him for being slow. But Mama K's gentle voice always steadied him. "Son, life tests you to see if you're truly ready for the blessing that's coming." At night, Darian sat on the restaurant's back steps, exhausted, watching the glow of lanterns dance across the dusty road. Children laughed nearby, chasing paper kites. He realized this was the first time in years that he wasn't pretending. There were no cameras, no expectations. Just him, his breath, and the quiet rhythm of real life. One evening, Mama K brought him a bowl of rice and sat beside him. "You remind me of my late son," she said softly. He too ran from the noise of the world looking for peace. He didn't have much, but he had heart. "Don't lose yours, boy." Darian looked at her with gratitude. "Thank you, Mama. You have no idea how much that means." She smiled. "I don't need to know. Just remember sometimes God hides your crown in the dirt to teach you how to wear it." Her words struck something deep within him. That night, Darian lay on his narrow bed, thinking about her wisdom. Maybe this was what he had been missing. Not money, not fame, but meaning. The kind that came from service, from humility, from people who gave love without expecting anything in return. And as he drifted to sleep, the noise of the city seemed a lifetime away. For the first time in years, Darian felt free, not because he had everything, but because he finally had nothing to prove. The weeks passed, and Darian grew into his new life at Mama K's kitchen. He no longer flinched when customers shouted or when grease splattered on his arm. Each morning, he rose before sunrise, swept the floor, and helped Mama K with the day's cooking. The scent of fried rice and pepper stew filled the air. He was learning more than recipes. He was learning patience, humility, and grace. But then she walked in. It was a humid Thursday afternoon. The lunch rush had ended, and Darian was wiping tables when a woman in a red dress entered the diner. Her perfume arrived before her, a soft, floral sweetness that lingered like a secret. She had perfect braids, manicured nails, and an expensive phone in her hand out of place among the traders and artisans who usually came in for food. "Mama K," she said with a bright smile. "1 plate of jollof and grilled chicken, please." Her voice was confident, her smile deliberate. When her eyes met Darian's, she paused, not with recognition, but curiosity. There was something in her gaze that made him uneasy, but he brushed it aside. He served her meal quietly. "Thank you," she said, glancing at his apron. "You're new here, aren't you?" "Yes, Ma," Darian replied. "You don't sound like you're from around here," she continued, tilting her head. Darian smiled politely. "Maybe I just sound tired." She laughed softly. "Or maybe you're hiding something." Her name was Tanya Bello, a marketing assistant from Licora, or so she said. Over the next few days, she began returning to Mama K's kitchen, always sitting at the same corner, ordering the same meal, and always talking to Darian. She was charming, quick-witted, and full of confidence, the kind of woman who could command a room without trying. At first, Darian found her refreshing. Her laughter reminded him of the city he had left behind, yet she seemed different, genuine, even. They talked about music, dreams, and the strange loneliness that came with living in a noisy world. Slowly, against his better judgment, Darian began to look forward to her visits. One evening, Tanya waited until closing time. "Darian," she said softly, "come have dinner with me tomorrow, somewhere quiet." He hesitated, but something in her eyes made him nod. Their dinner by the Macondo riverside was magical. Tanya told him stories about her struggles, how she worked hard to survive in a city that never forgave weakness. She made him laugh. She listened when he spoke. For the first time since leaving Licora, Darian felt seen. Weeks passed. Their bond deepened, and so did her requests. "Can I borrow some money till my salary comes?" she asked one afternoon. "It's just N10,000. I'll pay you back." Darian agreed without thinking. But soon it became N20,000, then N40,000. He noticed the pattern, but ignored it. He believed her, or maybe he wanted to believe. After all, she didn't know who he really was. She couldn't be using him, right? Then came the night that shattered the illusion. Darian had stayed late to close the diner. As he walked past the alley, he heard Tanya's voice, sharp and amused. She was on the phone, unaware he was behind her. "Yes, girl," she laughed. "I found him, the Johnson heir himself, working as a waiter in Macondo. Can you imagine? He thinks I don't know who he is. All these rich boys and their silly find-yourself fantasies. I'll play along a bit longer. When he finally trusts me enough, I'll make sure he takes me back to Licora. Then I'll be Mrs. Nwoko Johnson." The words hit him like a thunderclap. Darian froze. His breath caught in his throat. Every smile, every touch, every "I care about you," all lies. When Tanya turned around, her face drained of color. "Darian, wait." He stepped back, eyes blazing. "I thought you were different," he said quietly. "I thought, for once, I'd met someone who didn't care about money, but I was wrong. Please, don't," he interrupted. "You've said enough." He turned and walked away, his steps heavy but unshaken. He didn't look back. That night, Darian packed his few belongings. Before leaving, he found Mama K at the counter. I need to go, Mama, he said softly, her eyes filled with sadness. I knew this world would test your heart, but remember, betrayal is not the end of love, it's the beginning of wisdom. Darian nodded. Thank you for everything. As the bus rolled out of Macondo, he looked out at the fading lights. This time, he wasn't running from comfort, he was running toward clarity. He whispered to himself, maybe love isn't about finding someone. Maybe it's about finding peace first. The road to Nkuba village stretched endlessly ahead, winding through green hills and whispering palms. The farther the bus moved from Macondo, the lighter Darian's heart became. Though betrayal had bruised him deeply, it had also stripped away his illusions. For the first time in his life, he saw pain not as punishment, but as preparation. He arrived in Nkuba just before sunset. The air was calm, scented with the smoke of roasted corn and fresh rain on red clay. It was a small community, the kind of place where everyone greeted strangers, and gossip traveled faster than the wind. Darian found a modest room for rent behind a little church. The widow who owned the house smiled kindly as she handed him the keys. You look like a man who's been running a long time, she said. He smiled faintly. Maybe I've just been walking in circles. Well, she replied, this is a good village to stop walking and start living. He thanked her and unpacked his small bag. There was no luxury here, just a single bed, a wooden window, and the sound of crickets singing in the night. Yet somehow it felt more peaceful than all the grand mansions he had ever slept in. The next morning, Darian walked through the village square looking for work. He passed farmers selling yams, women laughing as they arranged vegetables, and children running barefoot through puddles. Then, a handwritten sign caught his eye in a supermarket window. Help needed sales assistant. He stepped inside and met Mr. Paul, a middle-aged shopkeeper with kind eyes and a friendly smile. I can work hard, sir, Darian said. I just need a chance. Mr. Paul looked at him thoughtfully. You seem educated, he said. Most men like you don't take this kind of job. Education doesn't make a man too good to work, Darian replied quietly. The older man smiled. I like that answer. You start tomorrow. The following day, Darian met Jude Omoruyi, his co-worker, a bright, ambitious young man in his early 20s. Jude had big dreams and a restless energy that filled the small shop. You're new? Jude said with a grin. Let me give you a few survival tips. Always smile at customers and never take credit from village aunties. Darian laughed. Thanks. I'll remember that. Over time, the two became close. They shared lunch breaks and stories, though Darian never revealed his true identity. He told Jude he was an orphan searching for a fresh start. Jude, in turn, spoke about his own dreams. One day, I'll leave this place, he said passionately. I'll marry a rich woman, move to Likora, and live the good life. I'm tired of struggling. Darian listened silently, his heart heavy with memories of a life Jude so desperately wanted, a life that had brought him nothing but emptiness. You think money will make you happy? Darian asked one afternoon. Of course, Jude replied without hesitation. What else is there? Darian smiled faintly. Peace. But you can't buy that, my friend. Jude chuckled and shook his head. You sound like a preacher. Maybe I'm just someone who's learned the hard way, Darian said. As days turned into weeks, Darian settled into the rhythm of village life. He swept floors, stocked shelves, and helped customers with genuine warmth. He was no longer the heir to an empire, just a man rediscovering his humanity. He began to notice the quiet beauty of Nkuba, the laughter of children after evening rain, the gentle greetings of elders at dawn, and the peace that came from knowing no one cared about his surname. At night, he would sit under the open sky, watching the stars scatter across the heavens like forgotten dreams. He whispered prayers not for wealth, but for wisdom. And deep within, he felt the slow healing of a heart once wounded by false love. Still, destiny was not done with him. Because just beyond those same dusty roads and moonlit fields, someone was about to cross his path. Someone who would change everything he thought he knew about love, humility, and purpose. The days in the Nkuba village began to flow like the quiet river that bordered its edge. Calm, predictable, peaceful. For Darian, it was a rhythm of healing. He woke early, swept the supermarket floor, and helped customers who often paid more in smiles than in cash. Life had finally lost its noise. But one afternoon, the peace rippled. She walked in wearing confidence like perfume. Julia Esenwa, the wealthiest woman in Nkuba. Her long braids shimmered against her shoulders, her gold earrings glinting under the soft sunlight that spilled through the supermarket window. Her voice was smooth, poised, and deliberate. "Good afternoon," she said, placing a basket of imported goods on the counter. Darian smiled politely. "Good afternoon, Ma. How may I help you?" She tilted her head slightly. "You already are." Her eyes lingered on him longer than expected, assessing, curious, intrigued. There was something about his calmness, his quiet humility, that stood out in a world used to flattery and pretension. As she left, Julia turned and said with a half-smile, "You don't look like someone who belongs behind the counter." Darian chuckled. "I used to think the same thing until I found peace there." From that day, Julia began stopping by the shop more often. Sometimes she came to buy small items she didn't need. Imported chocolates, fancy soap, or canned fruit. Other times she simply lingered, asking Darian about his day, his background, his thoughts on life. Jude noticed it before Darian did. "Bro, you know she's into you, right?" Jude said one evening, grinning. Darian laughed. "She's just being friendly." "Friendly?" Jude scoffed. "Julia Esenwa doesn't do friendly. She's rich, single, and picky. If she's talking to you this much, she's interested." Jude's tone had a trace of envy, but also fascination. He had admired Julia from afar long before Darian arrived. To him, she represented everything he longed for: wealth, power, escape. "You don't get it," Jude continued, his voice turning serious. "If Julia looks your way, you don't look away. That woman can change your life." Darian's smile faded. "Money already changed my life once. I'm not sure I want it to again." Jude frowned. "You say that because you've never been poor long enough." Darian looked at him, his tone calm but firm. "Maybe, but I've been rich long enough to know that poverty of the soul is worse than poverty of the pocket." Over the following weeks, Julia's interest deepened. She began sending lunch to the supermarket for Darian, sometimes even visiting at closing time. Her generosity made her admired by some and envied by others. "Darian, you're special," she said one evening, resting her manicured hand on the counter. "Most men I meet only see my money, but you look at me differently. It's refreshing." He smiled faintly. "Maybe because I know what it feels like to be seen for the wrong reasons." Julia leaned closer. "You're not like the men here, Darian. There's something polished about you, something hidden." Her words pierced him, but he deflected with a laugh. "Maybe I just use good soap, Ma." Julia chuckled, but her gaze stayed fixed, sharp, probing. Meanwhile, Jude grew distant. His smiles turned hollow. He began volunteering to deliver goods to Julia's mansion, hoping to win her attention back, but Julia barely noticed him. The same dream that once gave Jude motivation now poisoned his heart with resentment. One night after work, as the two men locked up, Jude finally snapped. "You don't deserve her, Darian," he said bitterly. "Deserve her?" Darian repeated. "Yes, you act like you're better than everyone. You think pretending to be humble makes you holy. Julia wants you, and you don't even care. Some of us would do anything for that chance." Darian sighed. "Maybe that's the problem, Jude. Some of us want what looks good, not what feels right." The words hung between them like a quiet storm. As Darian walked home that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that life was testing him again this time, not with poverty or betrayal, but with temptation disguised as opportunity. He remembered Mama Kay's words. "Sometimes God hides your crown in the dirt to teach you how to wear it." He looked up at the moonlit sky and whispered, "Then let me never forget where I found peace, not in beauty, not in money, but in meaning." And though he didn't yet know it, this inner strength was about to be tested in ways that would reshape his destiny through another woman, one whose quiet grace would soon make his wounded heart believe in love again. The rains came early that year in Nakuba village, washing the dust from the red earth and leaving behind the sweet scent of renewal. Darian Nwoko Johnson stood by the supermarket window, watching the drizzle trace soft lines down the glass. The world outside felt cleansed, peaceful, yet inside him, a quiet longing remained. He had built a simple rhythm: wake, work, eat, pray, and sleep. But even in peace, a man's soul can hunger for companionship. Still, Darian told himself that he was done with love, or rather, with illusions that called themselves love. Then fate arrived disguised in the most ordinary moment. It happened on a Sunday afternoon. The market square was alive with laughter, chatter, and the echo of children's games. A football flew across the road toward a woman stepping off the curb a fraction of a second before impact. Without thinking, Darian dropped his bag and ran. He caught her by the arm, pulling her safely aside just as the ball bounced past. She gasped, steadying herself against his chest. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Her eyes, deep brown, kind, yet quietly powerful, met his. Her breath trembled as she found her balance. "Thank you," she said softly. "You're welcome," Darian replied, still holding her arm. She smiled, slightly embarrassed. "You have quick reflexes." "And you have dangerous timing," he teased. She laughed, and the sound felt like a melody he hadn't known he missed. "I'm Anna Uday," she said, extending her hand. "I work at Hilltop Construction just across the bridge." "Darian," he said, shaking her hand gently. "I work at the supermarket near the square." They began to meet by coincidence, or perhaps divine design. Sometimes in the mornings on her way to work, sometimes in the evenings by the riverside path, where the wind hummed softly through the reeds. Anna was unlike anyone he'd known. She was calm, but not timid, strong but gentle, humble yet intelligent. She listened deeply, not to reply but to understand. Her laughter had no trace of vanity, and her eyes, those eyes carried stories of endurance and quiet faith. Over time, their friendship blossomed into something sacred. They shared roasted corn by the roadside, talked about books, and debated life's strange balance between pain and peace. Anna told him about her struggles losing her father young, working through school to support her mother, and learning to find joy in small victories. "You seem at peace," Darian told her one evening as the river reflected the orange sunset. She smiled. "Peace isn't the absence of struggle, Darian. It's knowing who walks with you through it." Her words touched something deep inside him, the same space that his wealth, his mansions, and even his travels had never reached. As days passed, Darian realized that with Anna, he didn't have to hide. She didn't ask where he came from or what he owned. She seemed to see beyond the surface, straight into the man beneath the layers of loss. He began walking her home every evening, their conversations deep and effortless. Once, as they paused by the riverside, Anna said quietly, "You have the eyes of someone who's lived many lives but never found rest." Darian turned to her. "Maybe I was waiting for the one who could remind me what rest feels like." Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. Back at his small apartment that night, Darian sat by the window in silence. The rain had returned soft, rhythmic, forgiving. He thought about Tanya's deceit, Julia's pride, Mama Kay's wisdom, and Anna's grace. It was as though life had been carving him slowly, removing every false layer until only truth remained. For the first time in years, he prayed not for success, not for protection, but for courage to love again, truthfully this time. The weeks after Darian met Anna Uday were the most peaceful of his life. They met often, sometimes by the riverside path, sometimes near the old mango tree at the village edge. They spoke about everything and nothing, about faith, purpose, and the kind of love that didn't need to perform to be real. To the villagers, their growing closeness was sweet and quiet like dawn unfolding. But not everyone shared that peace. Julia Essenwa, the elegant businesswoman of Nkuba, watched from a distance as the man she had tried to win slowly slipped away from her attention. She had built her life around being admired, respected, and wanted. But Darian, the one man who treated her with gentleness, yet never bowed to her charm, had chosen someone else. A simple girl, an accountant, a woman with calloused hands and humble clothes. To Julia, it felt like an insult wrapped in innocence. Meanwhile, Jude Omoruyi was fighting his own bitterness. He had long dreamed of being chosen by Julia, not out of love, but out of longing for escape from poverty. But now, even that illusion had shattered. Every day, he watched Darian's quiet confidence, his effortless kindness with customers, and the natural respect he earned from everyone around him. The jealousy grew like wildfire. One afternoon, as they closed the supermarket, Jude finally spoke, his tone sharp and cold. "Do you even know what you're doing?" Darian looked up, What do you mean? Julia, the wealthiest woman in this village, wanted you. You could have had everything. Money, comfort, freedom. Instead, you're wasting time with a woman who has nothing to offer. Darian's eyes stayed calm, his voice steady. She offers peace, Jude. That's something money never could. Jude scoffed. Peace doesn't pay bills. You talk like someone who's never had to fight for survival. Darian paused, meeting his eyes. You think I've never fought? You think pain and privilege can't live in the same body? You envy a life you don't understand, Jude. Trust me, the richest man can still be the loneliest. The words hung in the air like thunder before rain. Jude turned away, fists clenched. He didn't understand how Darian could throw away what others would die for. Later that week, Julia invited Jude to her mansion. Her tone was warm, but her smile was sharp. Jude, she said, pouring him a glass of juice. You're close to Darian, aren't you? Jude hesitated. We work together. Good, she replied. Then maybe you can help me. I believe he's making a mistake. Jude frowned. You mean Anna? Julia nodded slowly. A man like him shouldn't settle for less. You see, I care about him deeply, but he's blinded by pity and simple emotions. If you could just talk some sense into him, maybe he'd realize his worth. Jude's chest tightened. It wasn't just jealousy now, it was wounded pride. He wanted to matter, to be seen as useful. Julia's manipulation wrapped around his ego like silk. I'll talk to him, he said finally. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Jude approached Darian outside the shop. He forced a friendly smile. You know, Julia's worried about you, right? She thinks you're settling too low. And honestly, I agree. Anna's sweet, but you can't build a future with kindness alone. Darian's expression hardened, though his tone remained calm. Jude, he said quietly, if a man measures love by status, he's already poor. Jude blinked, caught off guard. You really think she loves you? He asked bitterly. You really think someone like Anna can handle your kind of life? Darian turned to face him fully, eyes steady. She doesn't have to handle my life, Jude. We're building a new one together, and unlike you or Julia, she doesn't need to control it. Jude's jaw tightened. You'll regret this. Maybe, Darian replied softly, but I'd rather regret honesty than live with pretense. That night, under the moonlight, Darian and Anna met again by the riverside. He told her everything about Julia's persistence, Jude's words, and the tension brewing. Anna took his hand gently. The world will always challenge peace, Darian. But peace doesn't mean weakness. It means knowing which storms are worth standing through. Her words, simple and steady, eased him. He looked at her, really looked, and saw not just love, but truth. As the river glimmered behind them, he whispered, Anna, for the first time, I'm not afraid of who I am, and that's because of you. From the shadows of a nearby palm, unseen eyes watched them, filled not with love, but envy. The storm was not over. In fact, it was just beginning. The winds of Nakuba village changed quietly that week, carrying whispers, jealousy, and confusion through the marketplace. Rumors began to ripple. Julia Essenwa has been rejected, some said. Others murmured, the supermarket boy is in love with the accountant. But to Darian Nwoko Johnson, the noise didn't matter. He had lived through the louder storms, storms of wealth, pride, and betrayal. And now, standing beside Anna Ude, he felt something he had never known before. Stillness that wasn't empty, peace that wasn't forced. The following evening, Anna met him by the riverside path, the sky painted in shades of amber and rose. She wore her simple white scarf, the one Darian always said made her look like grace itself. He sat beside her, silent for a long while, before finally speaking. "Anna," he said softly, "there's something I've been hiding." She turned to him, her eyes calm. "Then maybe it's time to stop hiding." He took a deep breath. "My real name isn't just Darian. It's Darian Nwoku Johnson. My father owns one of the biggest companies in Likora City. I walked away from that life because I wanted to be loved without the shadow of money. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to lose the one place I felt real." Anna didn't speak immediately. Her face remained still, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said quietly, "So you're the man they talk about, the heir who vanished?" "Yes," Darian admitted, lowering his head. "And I didn't mean to deceive you. I just wanted to start over as myself." Anna stood, walking a few steps toward the river. The breeze lifted her scarf as she spoke. "You think peace comes from running away, Darian? It doesn't. Peace comes from facing who you are and choosing to live truthfully, even when it's hard." Her words stung, but not in anger, in truth. She turned to face him again. "You didn't need to be poor for me to see your heart. I already did." He stood too, walking toward her. "I was afraid," he confessed. "Afraid that the moment you knew, I'd become just another man with money, not a man with meaning." She smiled faintly. "You forget meaning isn't given, it's lived. You've already shown me who you are. The name doesn't change that." The heaviness in Darian's chest lifted like fog at sunrise. He realized that love didn't need disguises, only honesty. Anna took his hand gently. "If you want peace," she said softly, "you can't spend your life proving you deserve it. You simply live it." They stood together in silence, the river glimmering behind them like liquid gold. For the first time, Darian didn't feel like the heir or the runaway. He felt whole because he had nothing left to hide. The next morning, word of Darian's true identity spread quickly through the village. Jude was furious, realizing that the man he had envied all along had been the very person he once dreamed of becoming. Julia was stunned into silence. Pride had blinded her to the one thing she claimed to understand: power. But Darian didn't gloat, defend himself, or explain. He simply kept working at the supermarket, helping customers as he always had. His humility disarmed even his critics. Eventually, Mr. Paul, the shop owner, approached him quietly. "Son," he said, "you've shown this village something we all forget, that greatness isn't about what you have, but what you give." Later that evening, Darian met Anna again by the riverbank. She brought 2 small lanterns, their light flickering against the soft ripples. "Let's leave one for who you used to be," she said, handing him a lantern, "and one for who you're becoming." They released them together, watching the lights drift away, 2 gentle flames floating toward the horizon. As the lanterns faded, Darian whispered, "Maybe this is what my grandfather meant when he said, 'To know yourself is to love truly.'" Anna smiled, her hand in his. "And now you do." The sun rose gently over Nakuba village, its golden light filtering through palm leaves and quiet rooftops. The air was still, peaceful, yet beneath it, the small town buzzed with a story too captivating to ignore. The missing heir of Likora, the son of Chief James Nwoko and Lady Miriam Johnson. Nwoko had been living among them, selling goods, carrying crates, and walking the red clay roads like any other man. By afternoon, the news had reached the city, and that same evening, 2 black SUVs rolled through the narrow roads of Nakuba, sending villagers peeking through their windows in awe. Inside the first car sat Chief James, his sharp eyes soft with worry, and beside him, Lady Miriam, her hand gripping her husband's tightly. "James," she whispered, "do you think he'll come home?" Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with longing the kind only a mother could know. "We'll see, Miriam," Chief James replied quietly. He left to find himself. Perhaps it's time we found him too. They arrived at the Golden Palm supermarket, where Darian was helping a young boy choose a bag of rice. When he looked up and saw his parents standing in the doorway, his breath caught. For a long moment, the world fell silent. "Father, Mother." His voice was low, uncertain, a mix of guilt and relief. Lady Miriam's eyes filled with tears as she walked toward him, her elegant heels sinking slightly into the red earth. "Darian," she whispered, cupping his face, "is this what you've been doing? Working here?" "Yes," he said softly, "and for the first time in my life, I feel alive." Chief James stepped forward, studying his son. The once polished heir now stood before him in a faded shirt, sleeves rolled up, his hands rough from labor, yet his eyes, once restless, now carried peace. "I see my son again," the chief said quietly. "Not the boy born into fortune, but the man who has earned his soul." That night, Darian invited them to the small riverside where he and Anna often met. The moonlight shimmered on the water as they sat on a wooden bench. Lady Miriam sighed. "We were so afraid for you, not because you left, but because we didn't understand why you needed to." Darian looked at her, his tone gentle but firm. "Mother, you and Father gave me everything except a chance to be ordinary. I needed to know who I was without the shadow of wealth, and I found it here, among people who have little but give much." Lady Miriam wiped her tears. "And this woman?" she asked softly, glancing at Anna, who sat quietly beside him. Anna stood respectfully. "Good evening, Ma." Chief James observed her closely, the modest white scarf, the calm posture, the quiet confidence. "You're the one who gave him peace," he said, half statement, half realization. Anna smiled humbly. "He already had peace, sir. He just needed to remember it." The chief's lips curved into a faint smile. "You speak wisdom beyond your years." For the first time in years, Darian saw his parents not as guardians of a legacy, but as people, flawed, protective, and human. Chief James placed a hand on his shoulder. "Oh, son, you don't have to reject where you come from to find who you are. You can take the lessons from here and build something greater, something real." Darian nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time I bring both worlds together, wealth with purpose, power with humility." Lady Miriam took Anna's hand, her eyes softening. "If this love has made my son wiser, then you have my blessing." Anna smiled, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Thank you, Ma. I only want what makes him whole." That night, as the river flowed under the moon, Darian felt something shift inside him. The boy who once fled from luxury had become a man who could now return to it not as its prisoner, but as its master. He had found what his wealth could never buy: truth, peace, and love. And as his parents' car drove away, promising to return in a week, Darian stood with Anna under the stars and whispered, "Home isn't where you're born. It's where your soul finally rests." Anna rested her head on his shoulder. "Then you found home twice over." A week later, Licora City woke to a headline that stirred the entire nation. "The heir returns. Darian Nwoko Johnson found living as a commoner." The story spread like wildfire: gossip pages, news broadcasts, and social media, all flooded with images of the young heir-turned-laborer. Some mocked him, others admired him. But Darian didn't care. For the first time, he was returning home not as an heir, but as a man who understood who he was. The black limousine rolled slowly through Aurum Heights estate. Darian sat beside Anna Uday, her white scarf glowing softly in the afternoon light. Outside the tinted windows, the city's towers rose like monuments of glass and pride. Anna's hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. "I'm not sure I belong here," she murmured. Darian turned to her gently. "Anna, this is just a city. The real home is the heart we carry." She smiled faintly. "Still, I've never seen marble floors that shine like mirrors." He laughed softly. "Neither had I until I stopped seeing my reflection in them." At the entrance of Aurum Heights mansion, servants and reporters stood in awe. Lady Miriam, dressed in soft gold lace, descended the stairs with quiet grace. Chief James followed, his gaze firm but warm. When they saw Anna step out of the car beside Darian, a hush fell over the gathering. She wasn't adorned in designer clothes. She wore a simple cream dress, modest and elegant, her calm presence radiating more dignity than any jewel could offer. Lady Miriam stepped forward. "So, this is the woman who taught my son to be human." Anna bowed slightly. "I only reminded him of what was already within him, Ma." There was a pause, then Lady Miriam smiled. "Then you have reminded us so." Inside, the reunion was quiet and heartfelt. The mansion, once a symbol of loneliness, now hummed with warmth. The staff whispered in disbelief at how different Darian seemed. He no longer walked with entitlement, but with humility anchored in purpose. During dinner, Chief James raised his glass. "To the son who left as a boy but returned as a man, and to the woman who helped him find his soul." The clinking of glasses echoed softly. After the meal, Darian walked Anna through the art-lined hallways. Each painting, each chandelier once felt like a cage, but tonight it felt like a home reborn. The next morning, they attended a charity event at the Licora Civic Center, an elegant gala filled with business elites and reporters. Whispers filled the air as Darian and Anna entered hand in hand. "That's her," one woman whispered. "The village girl. She doesn't even wear makeup," another scoffed. A few, however, whispered differently. "She looks so peaceful." Darian heard the noise but ignored it. When he took the stage to speak, the hall felt silent. He looked across the sea of faces, polished, proud, powerful, the same crowd he once sought validation from. "I once believed success was measured by what I could buy," he began. But wealth without purpose is poverty in disguise. I lost myself in privilege until I found love among those who had nothing and gave everything. He paused, glancing at Anna in the front row. My greatest lesson wasn't learned in a boardroom. It was learned on a red clay road, with hands that worked, not signed. I left to find truth, and I returned to build it. A murmur of respect rippled through the room. Even those who once mocked him now listened in reverent silence. After the event, reporters crowded around. One asked boldly, "Mr. Nwoko Johnson, is it true you intend to marry a woman from Nkuba village?" Darian smiled, his answer steady and clear. "Yes, because love, like purpose, doesn't care about status. It only asks for sincerity." He took Anna's hand again, his grip firm, his heart free. As cameras flashed, she leaned close and whispered, "I think you just changed what Likora calls love." He chuckled softly. "No, you did." That evening, back at Aurum Heights, Darian and Anna sat on the garden steps, watching the city lights shimmer below. "Do you ever miss Nkuba?" she asked. "Every day," he replied. "But maybe now I can bring a little of Nkuba's peace into Likora's chaos." Anna rested her head on his shoulder. "And what will you call it?" He smiled. "Redemption." The morning of the wedding came quietly, without fanfare, without cameras, without the glittering noise of society. The ceremony took place in a small white chapel on the outskirts of Likora, surrounded by garden blooms and a gentle sunrise that painted everything gold. There were no celebrity guests, no flashing lights, no grand orchestra. Only the people who mattered. Chief James Nwoko, Lady Miriam, Mama Kelechi Okonjo, and a few villagers from Nkuba who had come by bus to witness what they called a love made in truth. Darian Nwoko Johnson stood at the altar in a simple cream agbada, his once polished shoes now modestly scuffed. Anna Uday walked down the aisle in a white gown made from soft linen, her scarf folded neatly around her shoulders, glowing like dawn itself. As she approached him, the church seemed to fade into silence. Darian's heart swelled not with pride, but with awe. He had lived in palaces, but never felt rich. He had worn designer suits, but never felt clothed. Now, standing before her, barefoot on sacred ground, he finally felt whole. The pastor spoke softly. "Marriage is not the union of two perfect people, but the meeting of two honest souls who choose peace over pride and purpose over pleasure." When it was time for vows, Darian looked into Anna's eyes and said, "You found me when I was lost in comfort. You loved me when I had nothing to offer. From this day, I promise to build a home where peace lives louder than pride, and love speaks louder than wealth." Anna's voice trembled with emotion as she replied, "You showed me that true power is gentleness. I promise to stand beside you, not behind your name, but beside your heart." Their hands met, and the sunlight streaming through the chapel window crowned them in gold. When the pastor said, "You may kiss your bride," a quiet cheer rose from the small gathering. Even Lady Miriam wiped her tears, whispering to Chief James, "Now, I see the man our son was meant to be." After the ceremony, they held a simple reception in the garden of Aurum Heights mansion. There were no chandeliers or velvet drapes, just white tents, home-cooked meals, laughter, and music from a local band. Mama Kay danced with joy, her bright wrapper swirling as she sang, "When love is real, even a small pot feeds a crowd." The servants smiled freely, not out of obligation, but out of happiness for the man who had once lived among them as one of their own. Darian made sure everyone was served before he ate. "Humility," he said, "isn't what you do when you're poor. It's what you continue to do when you're blessed." Months later, Darian launched the True Hearts Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to teaching entrepreneurship and empathy among youth in both the city and rural areas. Its motto, inscribed on the logo, read, "Power finds purpose when it serves." Anna managed the foundation with quiet brilliance, ensuring every project was rooted in compassion. Together, they built something more lasting than wealth impact. Chief James, moved by his son's transformation, told him one afternoon, "You've done what I never could. You've made power gentle." Darian smiled. "And you gave me the courage to walk away, Father." That's where it began. One evening, months after their wedding, Darian and Anna returned to Nakuba village. They walked along the familiar riverside path, the same place where their love had begun. The air smelled of rain and wildflowers. Darian placed his silver watch beside Anna's white scarf on a flat stone, a ritual of remembrance. He whispered, "This watch once reminded me of time wasted. Now it reminds me of time redeemed." Anna smiled. "And this scarf once covered a woman afraid of being unseen. Now it belongs to a woman who walks in the light." The river shimmered as the two items rested side by side, symbols of what they had been and what they had become. They stood hand in hand, watching the lanterns of fireflies dance above the water. In that quiet moment, it was clear love had not made them perfect, but it had made them true. What they had been and what they had become. They stood hand in hand, watching the lanterns of fireflies dance above the water. In that quiet moment, it was clear love had not made them perfect, but it had made them true.